Let me know if that's working, Lopez. There's a delay. Is that working? Yes.
Can you hear us?
No?
Can you hear us? Can you hear us? Oh, yes.
Yes, cool. All right. I'm going to start it again so that on the podcast, it doesn't look like sound like a hot mess. So I will say this. Welcome back, everyone. It is Sunday Night Teacher Talk, a show that we have been running for 271 episodes plus the previous form of it, which is like 8 years of doing episodes just about every Sunday, unless something like massive comes up. And it is with that commitment that we come together because we want to be this intentional community that comes together on Sundays that really supports one another. So feel free, if this is your first time, you can ask any question that you want. It could be teaching or related, right? Because I realize that life and teaching often overlap, is kind of impossible to really separate them all the way. And feel free to answer questions in the chat as well. You'll see this going on where folks are just talking, they're having side conversations. They are not paying attention to me because that is not the only thing that matters. It is all the stuff that's going on. So if you're listening to this on the podcast, that is another element that, should you choose to ever check that out, you can do that as well. We are incredibly excited. So if you put a question in there also, I forgot to say this last week because we're just getting back into it, and here in season 8, if you put Q or question before your question, it helps the Wife for Life over here to just identify that easier and see that it is a question and not just talking. That being said, this week coming up on Wednesday, we are doing our first ever new teacher boot camp, right? So typically during the year, we do a boot camp, back to school boot camp. We've shifted that this year to focus on new teachers. And look, the idea behind this is always testing, right? I can't talk to everyone that is watching this. I can't talk to everyone that watches a video. I can't talk to everyone on any capacity. So it's testing things to see, is this something that is needed? Is this something that teachers need? So, yeah. So look, if you ever have suggestions, just send them to us, because that really helps us to just not sit here and go, what should we do? What do you think people need? And then trying to like surmise by looking at clues. It is a 2-night event on the 17th. Mm-hmm. Is that falling down?
It is.
It is. On the 17th and 18th of July, and we'll fix that later. It's real life here, everybody.
You just stand up and push in.
Often reminded. Yeah, I don't want to do that right now.
You don't have to.
Send my butts at the camera, and it gets weird. I'm just going to keep it real right now. So anyway, we'll be doing that this week, and it's going to be fantastic. I'm really, really looking forward to it. And then we are also going to be having, should I talk about the other thing you're working on right now that you're finishing up?
Sure.
Is it available now?
No.
So
I'm still building the page.
The classroom management workshop we did last year, we revamped all of the resources for it. And that is going to be sold as a whole package now too. So if you need help with classroom management this year, it is a 4-part series, and it really is going to help you to reframe classroom management, re-envision classroom management, what it could be. It's very tactical and practical steps on what you could be doing, what you can do for your students, what your students need to be doing, setting expectations, enforcing, I hate to say the word enforcing, but like holding up those expectations, and instituting things like policies, procedures, rhythms, all that kind of stuff into your classroom. And so that's going to be being re-released. It's the first time we've ever done this and just sold a course before. So that's coming up too this week. So with that, are we waiting for questions?
We are.
All right, because I would just want to say real quick, I think that is so fun that to my knowledge, I didn't even answer the text, but like, because it's been a week and you would understand if I told you about it, but that Maisha Hutchinson and Chris Carson met in real life. They are 2 people that have met. I'm pretty sure they met through Sunday Night Teacher Talk, or at least through the YouTube channel. And they met in real life this week, sent a picture. And I just thought that was really something special. If you've ever met someone that you've only known online, then you meet them in real life, it's really, it's like one of my favorite things. It's I always just feel like you're 3-dimensional all of a sudden, right? And
I've had that experience with YouTubers that we've watched for like different seasons, and then we got to meet them in person, and it was like, oh my gosh.
Oh, like Belief in Fatherhood.
Yeah.
We met, and I was like, bro, you're so little. Like, that was my first thought.
I'm sure that's exactly what he wanted to hear.
You just look so tall online. That's one of the things I get often is folks are like, noting how tall I am in real life.
Yes. All right, are you ready?
I mean, I'm not Burgess tall, but yes, I'm ready.
Height. You're a good height.
Thanks.
Okay, Rebecca is on Facebook asking, I work in the middle school self-contained 2nd year, 26-year total.
Gosh.
I have 7 paras. What classroom non-negotiables would you put in place? Most are new paras. She said, I want to be positive, but also have high expectations.
Yeah, and isn't it so funny that it's like that can feel like 2 different things. I'm going to shoot over the other camera. This is why, Reynolds, why do you need your own camera? Because my wife is doing other stuff while I'm like.
I don't like just sitting on camera as I'm like.
Well, you're also like commenting back and texting to people and stuff like that. So that's why. And I don't know why I even felt like I had to explain that, but I did. Classroom non-negotiables. I think one of the things that folks get twisted, especially when I work with new co-teachers and paras, is that there can be this feeling that positivity goes out the window when you start reinforcing norms in the classroom, as if you're being mean now. And you're not, I thought you were going to be nice. I thought you were cool. I thought this was different. And it is. But those things can coexist. They need to coexist, because I'm not serving you, student, at the highest level that I could be if I am not holding you accountable for certain things. So I think some of them are like, I refuse to talk when people are talking. And I don't know that I talked about this in a video recently, and it's certainly coming up in the training this week. And I talked about it in the classroom management training as well, but people get it confused that it's not just about you talking. It's not that you just like, I was doing it. I wasn't, you're always saying that I was talking. I wasn't talking, or I wasn't like, I am paying attention. I do know what to do. I was just saying something to someone else. You talking is affecting other people's learning. That if someone has a processing disorder, if they have ADHD, if they, any number of issues, right, where you talking is now creating competition in their mind to be able to pay attention, it's problematic. So I that is a non-negotiable for me. Things like I don't do extra credit. Like we need to get the work done now. This is why I use a timer in class, is because we need to get the work done now, because I want you to get it done now. I want you to feel the urgency of it now. I don't want you to come back at the end of the quarter and say like, oh, but I have a 65 and I need a 70. Is there anything I can do? Can I retake this stuff? Can I remake up this stuff? That is non-negotiable for me. That no, The answer is no. Like, you need to do the work when it is due, because I don't want you to, and look, I'm going to curse for a second, but I don't want you to half-ass a bunch of stuff. I want you to whole-ass everything that we're doing. I want you to go full Ron Swanson and just look at the thing we're doing right now. And that is incredibly important to me. And I think the other thing, really, like, if I was to just go off 3 right now, is like a deep level of respect. And I'll tell you this, and that sometimes, there's all kinds of stuff that I do in the classroom that I don't talk about on YouTube, because if you're not there, I feel like you don't get it. But I'll say one of those things that you can see in a lot of my older videos when I have students in it is I make fun of students a lot. There's a lot of making fun of each other that happens. But when you get to a place where that's from a place of love, like, this is how we see each other. We note each other. We are playful with one another. We take the seriousness out of the air sometimes, is just by being playful and having fun with one another. And that is okay. But there's also cheap shots, right? So, and this is something I try to teach kids, that don't take the low-hanging fruit, right? If a kid is overweight, we're not going to make fun of kids for being fat. Like, that's so lazy, bro. And if one year I had a kid who he was legally blinded, the strongest glasses I've ever seen. And these dudes were trying to make fun of him. It's not happening. It's not happening if you choose to wear your hair a different way, or if you talk a certain way. Like, you have a lisp. I had a student one year that had battled mouth cancer when he was younger. And so now he had this very, very heavy lisp. And those things are off the table. But that doesn't mean that those folks don't get to participate when we're having fun in class, when we are kind of teasing one another or being silly or something like that. I want that to be there, but it is tearing down someone's self-respect. It's making fun of or ripping someone, and your intention is to make them feel less than. Your intention is to make you feel better by tearing them down. We're not doing that in class ever. And that is something I stand very strong on. And that takes a while, but it definitely builds a culture. And I think, in my experience, with pairing that with kind of being silly and making fun of kids in class, it shows kids that you can still do this, but it doesn't have to be hurtful. It can just be for fun. And it's walking kids through that. Now, I'll be honest with you, like, side note there, you have to be willing, when you go into that, some kid's going to say something out of pocket to you, right? Like, I've had kids make fun of my kids. I've had kids say things about my wife. And that is oh, you went too far. It kind of feels like the baby, the lion cub, when they are kind of pulling on and, yanking on like the larger lions. Every once in a while, they do a little bit too hard and they have to growl back at them. That's the moment feels like a little bit there, but it's taking a breath, not taking it personal, and redirecting students, and then talking them through what was inappropriate, how it could be appropriate, and then we move on with life and love each other.
All right. Up next is Laura Green.
What's up, Laura Green? Laura Green's been all over Europe lately, or?
She was in Paris last week.
Yeah.
I think she couldn't sleep when that's why she was tuning in, but I wonder if you're still there. All right. Lara's question is, on a scale of 1 to 10, how rebellious do you advise teachers to get when it comes to teacher politics, state mandates, and in general, the BS that comes with the job? This is a great question that you always have difficulty answering, because I know is real answer.
I do, because I'll tell you this, Laura. It would be really interesting for me to take a job in a school where it's hard for me to answer this. And here's the reason. I don't do the mandated stuff. And I don't say that a lot of the mandated stuff, rather. I don't recommend people do it, like do what I do, because I have a pretty good sense of whether this is going to come back to bite me. And if it does, I have a way of righting the ship, apologizing, moving forward, and not get my feelings hurt. I worked for long enough under so many different people that I saw the new initiatives, the things we're allowed to talk about, the things we're not allowed to talk about, the things you should talk about, you shouldn't talk about with students, the things like mandatory like teacher expectations, right? So mandatory expectations of like all of a sudden in 1 year we just like we got a new principal. It was like our 6th principal in like 3 years, and they just decided we're going to start signing in. Our school's so small we never had to sign in, right? And I just thought it was so dumb. I just didn't do it. They also instituted lesson plans that year. I hadn't done a lesson plan in 10 years because we didn't have to. All of a sudden we had to do it, and I couldn't get a good answer on why we had to do it, so I just didn't do it. And I've talked about this many times. When we have staff meetings and professional developments that I think are nonsense, I just fake a phone call and I leave the meeting and I go do other stuff, right? I'm not just like smoking a cigarette if I smoked, right? Like in the parking lot, I'm just like doing other work. That I don't pay a lot of attention. If you give me a key to the school and you tell me I'm allowed to be there whenever I would like, I treat that as like I'm an adult and I've stayed. And look, this is another thing I don't justify, right? Or like, but I've stayed in West Philly till like 4 o'clock in the morning before working on projects at school because I thought it was important. I've done a lot of that stuff, and some stuff I wouldn't do again. Some things I would do again. But for me, it comes down to what is best for kids. So I'll give you an example of this, right? Like yesterday was the attempted assassination attempt. So this is what we're hearing on the news. That it was an assassination attempt on the life of Donald Trump, right? There's a lot of teachers that would be told, do not touch that with a 10-foot pole in your classroom. I'm 100% talking about it in class, but I don't lead a conversation ever. I facilitate a conversation, right? Like, because we don't know. I did the same thing with the Capitol building takeover. I did the same thing during like after the George Floyd incident, and a lot of this, like these really heavy moments during the Black Lives Matter movement. I did it during the, what was the other one with, when they were talking about, it was a lot of like famous women kind of calling out men that had sexually abused them. Me Too movement, right? But it is more of it because I know someone's going to come into school, and here's how it's going to go. Oh my gosh, Reynolds, did you see what happened on the news yesterday with Donald Trump? I did. And then here's I go, man, how'd you feel about that? Like, and then I let the conversation happen in a safe place where I know I have the capacity to facilitate that conversation in my classroom. If you don't, then I don't suggest doing it, right? But I know my why for all the things I do. I know why I walk out of meetings. I know why I don't do lesson plans. I know why I don't sign in the morning. And if I get called into the office, I have a very strong why as to why I'm doing the things that I'm doing and the things that and not doing the things I'm not doing. So it's hard for me to tell someone else how to kind of navigate that. Because some schools have very good reasons. Some schools have incredible leadership and incredible teams. I just happen to come from a school where, like, in the end, we had horrific leadership, and I didn't agree with any number of things, and so that's why I chose the things that I chose. But I mean, I kind of have been doing that my whole life. I think, at least as an adult.
I think you have as well. And I think I always hit the wrong button. You're really you really think about the why behind it, and you try and get an answer first of like, why are we doing this? Why do we need to do this? And then you have the conversation and you refute a lot, even though you're refuting, it's like thoughtful and
it's out of curiosity, right? Just like
but you do that work a lot on the front end. And then when you go, no, like my time could be like, I see where my time can be better allocated. You don't go and you're not just sitting on your phone and like in your classroom. You're like literally doing all the other things. Which is what a lot of people do,
right? That's why I bring that up. Because folks are like they don't come to the meeting, but they're just. There's a mosquito in your hair. Gosh.
I can't
get really happening live.
There's like no mosquitoes in New Mexico, or hardly.
Yeah, we have the one
and
of
we've
them.
Won, and it's in the room with us.
So anyway, it is.
I just think that's an important thing to note because it's such a difference of like, it's not a like, I'm not doing this because it's stupid.
Yeah, it's
right?
not throwing
like,
a tantrum.
Right, exactly.
It's realizing that I'm a grown up, I'm a professional, and this is not this move is not about the betterment of anyone. It's about a move to do something just so we can do something. Right,
like a procedure or a way to like think that they're holding people accountable. Yeah. And so I think, that's the real difference that's hard to kind of come across when that question is asked for every single time.
Because I'll say this, and you're hitting on this, but I want to put it this way. I am exhausting it has been thought of and talked about, and I speak truth to power constantly at an exhaustive level where it's like, they don't want to have the conversation anymore. I understand, like, we're not getting anywhere. So, but it's
they don't ever give a good answer to you.
No, but I
so
don't
it's
not like a one-time conversation or I'm just pissed off in a meeting. It's like I exhaust the communicative process and then move on. So,
Laura said she's going to say it's about a 7.
Of what?
She said, like, on a scale of 1 to 10, how rebellious do you advise teachers to get? So she said, about a 7.
It depends. Look, I mean, some people, I'm like, bro, go for it. Like, if you know what you're doing is best for kids, like, and you're at a particularly heinous place, like, do it. But you take the repercussions for that, right? Don't say it was Reynolds from YouTube that told you to do it.
Right.
But there's other folks that you haven't been doing it long enough. You don't know enough yet. Leadership really, really might have a good idea here. And just because it doesn't sound right to you doesn't mean that it's not right. Like, there's other factors to take in.
That's a nuanced question for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on. Sophia is up next asking, newbie, grade 9 Spanish teacher here.
All right.
So is it really realistic to only work contract hours? I'm a recovering perfectionist. I want to just make it through this first year, but not slack.
So here's the problem.
Great question.
I
love the idea of a recovering perfectionist because I am also it's driving me nuts that pencil shaving is like falling off, and I'm so annoyed that I didn't even look at it before we went on. Because I am a perfectionist with things, but I love the idea of a recovering. I don't know if that's like a real thing that you went to like counseling for or just something you're aware of, but I feel like I'm going to start calling myself a recovering perfectionist. Anyway, that's my rabbit. You can go ahead and answer the question now.
All right. So this is a great question. Is it possible to work contract hours? I don't think a job like a teacher, when you're first starting out, you can do within contracted hours. But I don't think you have to give your whole life to it, right? I have a video, and I forget what it was called, but it was like, I think it was called like, do teachers need to be martyrs? And I don't think so. I think there is I think teachers get something out of giving too much and then telling everyone how they gave too much and how like, oh my God, I've been working like 80 hours this week. And it's like, what's wrong with you? Like, why would you do that? And I have this part I'm thinking about for a talk that I'm about to give where, the greatest love of all, or not the greatest love of all, I Will Always Love You that Whitney Houston covers, Dolly Parton's song, is one of the greatest songs, I think, in the history of the world. When Whitney Houston didn't have it in the tank anymore, and there was a performance, it was the last time she ever did this, I believe it was in Australia, she was on stage, and she went to hit that high note in the song, and she couldn't do it. That's what it looks like when you have the song is equivalent to a great lesson plan, but you don't have it to push off to make the lesson plan incredible. So I think that there has to be a boundary and a balance in there, but that when you are a new teacher, you're going to have to, like, I came in as early as I could. And even if you stay a couple hours afterwards and then give part of your Saturday, I'm just not about giving all your hours. And this is where I'm talking about, like, schools can often create things for teachers to do that just fill up time that don't really help, right? So like 8-page long, my first school, my lesson plans were like 8 pages long. And it was maddening. It took the entire day on a Sunday. So buy back that time, find resources that are already made, find a lesson plan that's already made, and then put your spin on it. Whitney Houston didn't write I Will Always Love You Dolly Parton did. She just made it awesome, right? Like it's in my estimation is way better than Dolly Parton, and that's no shade at Dolly Parton, right? She's incredible, but it is a better version of a song that was already written. So how can you sprinkle your magic on something that was already created? So it's looking for those opportunities to get your time back, but by putting parameters on there. And this is actually one of the things we're going to talk about in the boot camp is this idea of like, how do you do that? How do you look at your life? So I'll say this. One of the things that I talk to people about all the time is this idea of Parkinson's law. And Parkinson's law is an activity or a task takes the time that you give it. So if you have all day to lesson plan, it will take you all day to lesson plan. If you give yourself a 2-hour window and then you just sit down, I'm not cleaning the desk before I do it. I'm not taking the dog for a walk. I'm not going to do dishes first. I'm not going to like have these little other things to do. I'm putting in headphones. I'm putting on blinders. I'm sitting down. I'm doing this one thing for 2 hours. You will get a lot more done. I find for me, one of the best ways to do that is to get out of my house and do it. I see projects everywhere in my house. So if I go to the library, if I go to a coffee shop and I just blinder it for 2 hours to do this, then I find that I can get a lot more done. A lesson plan that's a 6 is way better than a lesson plan that's a 10 if it costs you too much of you. So it's thinking about that. So no, my short answer is no, you cannot do it within contracted hours. I don't think, but it's putting those boundaries on and those so that you're not burning yourself out. Here's the other thing. And we just talked about this. We created not the video that just came out, last Tuesday's video. I talk about we have a new teacher to-do list that you can just go to that video. There's a link and it's completely for free. It's like 20 things that I think you should do before the beginning of the year. But one of the things on there is don't waste your enthusiasm. That when you're that excited at the beginning of the year, like burning the candle at both ends it's not going to wear you down, right? It's like your candle's a little longer or something robust than someone that's been doing this for a while. And for me, that made me more excited. Like we would go, the whole family went to the school every time I cleaned my room up, every time I set my room up. My wife, the kids, sometimes the dog would all come up to the school and enjoy getting that ready. It was something that was life-giving, not life-taking to me. So that's just a couple of ideas within there. But my best to you, Sophia. I hope that this is an awesome year. And if you need anything, come find us.
She said like, yeah, she listed a few activities that she loves doing. She's like, I just don't want to be planning 24/7. And I think, yeah, don't, because you literally could plan 24/7, but those things that you listed are the things that are going to fill you back up and give you the energy to go in and serve your students. Well.
Yeah, you have something to give. You filled the tank back up. Because like
it's like necessary.
I have a quote in my book from a friend of mine that says, if the car doesn't have gas, nobody's going anywhere.
Absolutely. Okay. John Lopez.
Hit it, Lopez.
He's asking you a different type of question.
Yes, always. I love it.
He's asking, what is your favorite meal now that you are in New Mexico?
Well,
I feel like that's a hard one because we've changed our diet so much being here. Because we're completely, I try and make my family be grain-free, seed oil-free, like no preservatives or chemicals in your food. I read every label ingredient. That's a harder one.
It's the truth, Lopez.
We eat a lot of things in bowls and with like cauliflower rice. They're not traditional like New Mexico dish.
I have a limited palate right now, Lopez.
You don't have a limited. We eat very flavorful food.
We eat great food. But it is not like when I was moving to New Mexico and I was like, oh, it's all about the corn tortillas and enchiladas and all kinds of great like Tex-Mex Mexican food. Because I'll say this, Lopez, and Romina told us this. So Romina is the student that wrote my foreword to my book. We had this conversation once about how like folks just think of Mexican food and you think of like whatever, you're at Chili's or Taco Bell or whatever, but depending on where you come from Mexico, and this is like such a no-duh moment.
Or in New Mexico or Texas or
Yeah.
wherever, it's so different.
It's different, right?
it's
So like
territorial.
where did the Mexicans that made that specific Mexican food come from? Because there's different ingredients available at like, so it depends where you come from. So Mexican food we found initially in New Mexico was far different than Mexican food that we were eating like at legit Mexican food joints in Philly. But it's like there's way more flour tortillas, and it was like corn's like not an option where we are for some reason, but it depends on where you come from in Mexico. But I'll tell you what, the flour tortillas are jamming.
When you can get some good homemade ones.
Where did we go?
Yesterday?
No, it was that joint in Texas that your mom gets them from.
Just Roses.
Roses.
They make them right there on site, and they're so good.
But so I'll say my favorite thing is a favorite thing it's always been, Lopez. I love, it's such an American answer, hamburgers on the grill.
Still, we just got a grill because moving, with a moving company, you can't bring your grill. So we had to get rid of our grill, and we just got one. With a 4th of July sale. So
two meals
very excited about that
all time are still, and I haven't even had a drink in like 130 days or something like that. But man, a hamburger on the grill in the summer with a beer or a steak with some kind of vegetable with a glass of red wine, bro, you can't beat it.
See, that's grain free. I'm totally down with that one. But the buns, I have a recipe I'm going to make. Stop. Your face. Everybody in the comments is like, CJ's face, if you could only have a thought bubble what would be in that thought bubble while I was talking?
The buns are too small. I don't know what's wrong with these gluten-free people. They make the buns are like this big for your burger. It's like, bro, you know these burgers are made from America, right? And we're in Texas. Bro, come on.
But yeah.
It's like tiny little
I forced everybody to eat
European bun on like an American burger. It's like, what are we doing?
Sorry, Lopez. That was not a good answer.
Yeah. All right. We went off the rails on that one.
Jacko is up next.
What's up, man?
I recently started my own YouTube channel. Lots of people at school know about it. How to minimize the noise. A lot of people having opinions on it, students and educators.
Yeah. This is such an awesome question because it's going to be something your family's going to have opinions on too, right? So like, if I get recognized in public, my daughter's mortified. My son thinks it's like the greatest thing that like literally ever happened to a human being. My wife just fades away, kind of like Homer Simpson in the bushes. And
that's
I'm like,
not true.
Oh, did you meet my wife? My wife, I swear she was just here a moment ago. What happened?
I'm more likely in real person to meet someone.
Yeah.
It's fine. It's this being on camera that's not my jam.
I think part of the feeling of that is, one, it's really knowing why you have a YouTube channel. The other one is it's why do you have a YouTube channel? And then being like, knowing why you're doing that, right? So I want students to live the life that they were destined to lead. How do I do that? By helping teachers to be the teachers that they're called to be. That is my life's mission now. So it's my mission, I don't care what anybody thinks. Like, I don't care what y'all think. Like, if you have some effective criticism, I love criticism. I think criticism's a gift. If it is well-meaning, if you're just trying to tear me down or something like that, I don't have any time for that. That took a while to get to, though, because I realized I'm not the greatest teacher in the world. So the feeling I got when I started a YouTube channel was that, who are you to have a YouTube channel? Like, you're not even the best in the school. Like, you're not the greatest. That everything doesn't go great in your class all the time. That there was a lot of like imposter syndrome there, but that's where I try to come out of. It's that anyone can start a YouTube channel. Y'all want a YouTube channel? Go do one. And then the hard thing was when the YouTube channel started picking up, when I had more than 5 subscribers, when I started getting brand deals, when those brand deals were making me more money than I was going to make as an educator that month. And look, and those are not all the time, right? Like, I'm not making like, don't get it twisted. We don't make bank off of what we're doing. But there are moments when you'll get a job with someone that you will make more money than you will in a month of teaching, right? And then there's feelings that people have about that. Who am I to write a book? Right? Like it was, and I remember I would hear this stuff from folks like, oh, Reynolds thinks he's like, can write a book. No, I fostered a community. I was asked to write a book. I prayed about it. I felt like that was the thing to do. So I wrote a book. The end. Like you could write a book too. Go write a freaking book. Go, you start an Instagram. You start a YouTube channel. What I found though is that it helps me to pay attention to the effective criticism, but also don't just listen to the critics. You don't know anyone watching this, right? So Jocko and otherwise. Jocko, you're going to say something. You're going to be from a certain place and be a certain kind of person, have a certain personality, deal with things in a certain way that are going to speak to someone else. That in fact, catch this, ready? Your ordinary is somebody else's extraordinary, right? There's all kinds of stuff that I do and say on YouTube that is totally normal to me. I don't really think much about it, and I'll put it out there and I'll get a ton of comments and emails and messages on how much that impacted someone's life. Who knew? Who knew? It didn't seem like it's like if you're a person that makes jokes all the time, you're not really thinking about like always being funny. It's just dumb stuff comes out of my mouth all the time, right? If you're someone that just dances well, it just comes naturally to you. So those things that come naturally to you are unnatural for other people, but helpful. So who are you showing up for that the work you're doing is going to help someone else produce fruit in their own life? And that's what we're trying to do, right? We are tending a garden of educators and just trying to make the world better for kids ultimately. So when I can get behind that and I remember that, I really don't care what other people think, and I just don't talk about it. For me, I talk about it with students because students are fascinated. If teachers are fascinated, talk about it, but I hate when someone brings it up. I hate when it's like, because look, I've had any number of teachers come to my school in West Philly because I taught there. Like they found out what school I was at and then they got a job there. And that's kind of uncomfortable because I hope I didn't paint a picture where you think this is going to be like Shangri-La and then it's like not at all what you expected. Yeah. So it's like, that's a little bit tricky. I don't like when people bring that up. I don't say, hey, I'm CJ Reynolds. Like I have a YouTube channel. You should just subscribe. I'm out here serving the people I'm meant to serve in a way that I think I'm supposed to be doing it. And I don't really bring it up at school. But my friends will still like bust my chops about it. And that's fine because that's different. But yeah.
No, you don't bring it up at all, which I find fairly funny.
Yes.
Birdie tells everybody.
Birdie tells everyone immediately. Hey, what's up? What's your dad do? He's on YouTube. I'm like, bro, I do a lot of other things. Like YouTube's a branch. I also speak, I write, there's other stuff that we do.
Well, for people that don't understand YouTube, they think even at 80,000 subscribers are like, oh, you make tons of money off of YouTube. And it's like, no, you really don't.
I'll tell you straight up.
Platform this is not where we make our income
the
at
realist,
all.
So it can be if you have a lot of brand deals.
No, but that's different. That's brand deals. You only make through people think AdSense makes a ton of money. That's what I'm talking about. That's how you get paid from YouTube. It's AdSense.
Yeah.
YouTube opens you up to brand deals, and that's your own negotiation abilities to be able to negotiate for yourself. But you have to have hundreds of thousands of views on each video or million subscribers to actually make an income level from YouTube AdSense.
Yeah.
And that does not happen for us.
No.
That's okay.
And look, if I keep, so you can find the next question. I'll just say this real quick. The realest of the real is that last winter was the hardest winter we've ever had.
Yes.
We did brand deals weren't coming in.
We were wondering if we should still do this.
Yeah, it was hard, man. But you get those, I don't get 2-week paychecks anymore. I was volunteering all of my time here in New Mexico, working with other schools, right? Just trying to be a good neighbor. That's what I felt like God was calling me to do. But that it was a dry season. And I'm curious to see how this year is going to go as well, because then other years it's bumping, right? It's way more speaking. It's way more opportunity. It's way more brand deals, but you don't really know where those come from all the time. So yeah.
It's interesting. Okay. Havan, am I pronouncing that? Or
I hope so.
Yeah, I'm really terrible. Like sometimes.
We don't have to go into the whole thing. I feel like we say this every time there's a tricky name.
I'm
but
bad with pronouncing names. I need an app, and I'm not going to use my app on the show.
We're very glad that you're here, and we will get better.
All right, their question is, I am new to the community. Oh, dang it, my pencil shaving just fell again. I am new to the community, and I just want to say thank you for all the content. Oh, you produce. Thank you. You're welcome.
First of all, I appreciate that.
Question. I thought that was a question. Sorry.
Since my favorite color is orange, I really appreciate your profile picture.
Right? Let's see this question.
As a
senior in college, you should have.
Just saying.
As a senior in college with a high school English job lined up,
Nice.
I'm a bit worried about lesson planning.
Yep.
Student teaching has been very rough at times with having new lessons ready daily for multiple classes. Do you have any advice on this constant task?
I'll put the next one up because I love it. I like I said, end of question. All right. So I wonder how much you can put in those little like when you ask a question. That's something we don't know on this end.
Yeah.
Right?
Is it limited? Does anybody know?
It's got to be, because everyone that has long questions, it's always like we always have to try, or sometimes we miss half of it, and it's like. So I will say that Javon, so I have a workshop that I did last year on this that we are going to put back out so that people can buy it, because I think it's really helpful to people, which is why we made it. I would say I'm going to say it like this, and I don't mean this in any sort of disrespectful way or to be hurtful, but it's really good that you had a hard time in student teaching seeing what putting so much time and effort into something like lesson plans can do to your class, how it really hurts your class by you not being able to it's like you're so concerned about the building of the house that you don't realize that like what sells the house is the lighting fixtures and the paint and the carpet or flooring choice. It's like, but you're so just worried about do the doors close and is there a roof, right? And then it's like we're just living in a house of like drywall that hasn't been painted or something like that. It's not appealing at all. And that's what lesson planning can feel like a lot of times. My bit of advice to you would be find a rhythm that works. This is the thing that worked best for me. So I'll say it like this, and folks that have been on here, you've heard me say this a million times, but Mondays for me looked basically the same every Monday. Was like new vocabulary. It was a new week of journal entries. It was a new concept that week. It was a new part of the book. So you're creating something new that happens on Monday. Tuesday was that concept a little bit deeper, but then we still did all of our sort of like auxiliary activities were still the same. It was still reviewing vocabulary, still writing journal entries, but we went deep into the concept. Wednesdays was independent reading, still reviewing vocabulary. I found that like things like vocabulary, kids are not going to study like you want them to at home. You have to build that rhythm in your classroom. And if I can do that for 5 minutes every single day, but I saw my scores skyrocket as opposed to when I didn't do it, side note. But it's building that rhythm in on Wednesday, building the rhythm in on Thursday, and then Friday being an assessment and the end of the week. And then the more rhythms I was able to layer in, we also talk about this in the classroom management workshop. I'm not mentioning these things again and again and again because I want you to go purchase them necessarily, but for those that have done it, and to just mention if it's a resource that you need, that having rhythms like things that take up mind share, like makeup tests, right? If you were absent the whole week and there's a test on a Friday, I still ask you to take it. Why? Because what else are you going to do? One. And two, bro, you're getting to look at the test before you take it. And anyone that doesn't like their grade, now look, you could have a 95 on it. You could have a 98 out of 100 on a test. You can still retake it the next week. You could have a 4 and retake it next week. You could have got a 0. And as long as you weren't given a 0 for talking or cheating, right, which you are not allowed to retake a test if that happens. But as long as that, if you just got every single answer wrong, you can retake it Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, the following week. This is built into the rhythm, right? So it's taking away mind share that I would have to use up otherwise. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, before school, during lunch, or after school, you can take the test. And it has to be in a one-shot deal. You can't start it in the morning, take a little bit at lunch, take a little bit after school. That's stupid. Yes, I said that word. So it is building in the rhythm. So lesson planning is no different. So that when I'm looking at my Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, I'm already blocking out Friday for an assessment. I'm already blocking out 20 to 30 minutes on a Wednesday for independent reading. I'm already blocking out 5 to 8 minutes each day for vocabulary. So I'm chunking all of these things. Now, what that requires you to do is get really good at classroom management. And so, because then you're running your class, because any teacher can tell you transitions, for instance, take up an enormous amount of your day. Trying to get from this thing to this thing without everyone losing it. So how can you do that in a fun or interesting way? We talk about that in the workshop also, but there's also a free video on YouTube called Transitions. If you go on the desktop, go to the top of my page, just type in Real Rap with Reynolds Transitions, it's going to pop up. Transitions take up a lot of your time. Starting class takes up a lot of your time. Ending class takes up a lot of your time. So it's getting better at those parts. So you're getting through more stuff in a day because you're just start building these rhythms. So that's what I would do is come up with a scaffold of vision that works for you and your students, and then start just plug and play each week. That really helps.
I just want to remind people, we don't say these things. The reason we even started workshops was because you can't get all of this across in a YouTube video.
Oh my gosh, no.
CJ really I think that's the hard part. And that's why we started. It's like, you just can't get all of this, and it builds. Like our classroom management workshop, the reason I love it, it's so I made him go through it 1,000 times. I go, okay, what about this? And what about this? And what about this? To really refine it for people to get a clear sense of it's a building block. It each one builds off of the other. And you were able to get really uber specific and this, and this.
It's the most comprehensive thing I've ever created in my life.
But that's why we created, because you can't do all this in a YouTube video. People don't even have the
We could still make another 4-part series on classroom management.
We really could. Yeah, it's that.
And maybe
long.
that's in the future.
But that's why we do these workshops, because they're more comprehensive than a YouTube video. Yeah. Okay, Josh is up next asking, I am sitting in on interviews tomorrow for a new teacher that will be teaching the same class as me. Any ideas for questions to ask that are not the typical ones?
Oh, man. One of my favorite questions, and this show has fallen out of the limelight a bit, but my buddy, Randy Rebai, who has a new book coming out, my friend, just wrote the newest addition to the Avatar: The Last Airbender series. So, and that guy used to drive me to school. That's what I remind him of every single time that I see it. Whenever he has, because he's friends now with Jason Reynolds, and whenever he has some post like that, I'm like, you've come so far from when you used to drive me to school all the time. I'm really proud of you. So Randy used to, and he's such a deadpan dude. But really funny. We would sit in interviews and he would ask them, his last question was always, if you were a character on The Walking Dead, which character would you be and why? That was his question. When The Walking Dead was the height of its popularity. I think he used to also ask, he would find out what showed people was. He also did the same thing with Parks and Recreation and the same thing with Game of Thrones sometimes as well. So that was a great one. I like asking people why teaching and why this grade. And I think that's because I like my answer. I was very intentional in 9th grade. I'm very intentional about becoming a teacher. And you want to see, and not everyone is, right? Not every teacher is super intentional, or teaching was because they couldn't find something else to do. Or they want the same schedules as kids or something like that. But trying to see who you're dealing with here. Asking them things about what else do you do outside of school? I want to know, do you have hobbies? Do you have friends? Do you do other stuff outside of school? Who's your teacher hero, right? When you look at the world, was it someone you knew? Was it a book that you read? Was it a movie that you watched? Was it someone that's online, like that you follow or something like that, like a Ron Clark or a Hope and Wade King or Dave Burgess or something like that? Like, who is it that is your hero? Gosh, I would love. Can you put in the comment section what would be a great question that Josh could ask as an interview question tomorrow? I feel like beware of whatever Chris Carson's going to say, because I'm already concerned about whatever that's going to be. But for everyone else, I'm just looking for what question would you ask?
Or what have you been asked in an interview that was like a question that stood out to you that you were like, oh yeah, this was a great question when someone asked me.
I'm just kidding about Chris Carson, by the way. I mean, really be careful, but I love that guy.
One of the other things I thought you did not mention to Josh, but that you do with new people that you're going to interview is you look them up on social.
Oh.
And you do a deep dive.
I always do, right? And then that's a good time to remind people to block their freaking Instagram, because that keg stand, although it was impressive, not always appropriate for
or their Facebook.
I noticed this last week, real quick. I don't know when you change the camera back, and sorry. I just keep talking over here like I'm not paying it, like I'm an Olin Mills picture from the 80s. But yeah, I always look people up on social, and I'll tell you what, my daughter hates this. I look all her teachers up on social as well. Every single time she has a new teacher, I just go through Facebook or LinkedIn or Instagram or whatever, because I want to see, it gives me a glimpse of who you are. Do you have kids? Have you been doing this for a long time? Did you grow up in this area? Like,
do you bash kids on your off days?
I don't know. Like you have social media, like use it. Like you put it out there. It's not like I'm like sitting outside your house, George McFly, and you with some binoculars.
You were in an interview once, or you sat in to do an interview, and you were the only person I remember this story because he came in and told me that like you knew all this stuff about the person that was being interviewed, and even the like principal and the other folks were like, "How do you know all this stuff?" And you were like, "I looked him up." Yeah. And I remember thinking like, "Oh, that's so weird," but
I got it.
Ew, and now I have blood all over me.
And I have a dead mosquito on my hand. That's how
but I remember thinking,
well, thanks for coming to the show today, everybody.
I remember thinking like,
Carnage.
oh yeah, that's so smart and such a simple like. Yeah, look them up online.
I knew.
Get a little intel.
So
it's not a bad thing.
And you know what? It's fair enough. No, I do it also. Why? Because people come to my school and they know who I am from online. Bro, quid pro quo. All right, like I'm going to check you out too.
Okay, moving on. I hope
Side note: block your Instagram, everybody, and your TikTok, and like, unless it's teacher stuff.
Right. Okay. Maish is asking. You mentioned that you'll be conducting a boot camp for seasoned teachers. Do you need any input from some seasoned individuals? By the way, I know a few people. I wrote back to her in the comments. I said, this is a great idea because we really could. It's like, that's a tough one. We haven't developed that one
Here's
yet.
why. We haven't, because
there's a lot of other stuff on our plate right now.
But also the more you work in schools, everybody's different, right? Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like, what does our community need? What do the people that would sign up for a boot camp that we're doing need?
We should put a little, like, what do they call that when you have like a little crew of people that do that? Like, there's like an official
like a focus group?
Yes, we should put together a focus group.
That's a good idea.
All right, keep your eye out. All right, let's see what else we got. Okay. Ramblin' is saying, hey,
No. Ramble and wreck.
Okay, well, all right, thank you. I've been watching a lot of your videos because I just got my first job offer for a high school physics math teacher. I've never taught before, coming from the nuclear physics industry. Any must-know tips?
So one, I'm
not a teacher, but I'm going to say this as a mom of someone, man, do some science, do projects. Like, it's just physics, like do some projects. Like, kids love to do things.
Yeah. So first thing I'm going to tell you, are you switching that camera?
Oh, I am.
The first thing I'm going to tell you is go buy the book Expedition Science by my friend Becky Schnexer. It is available on Amazon. I just reread part of it because I was using part of it for a talk that I was doing. It's so good. And Becky doesn't do anything by the book. Now, I'm not saying don't do anything by the book, especially if you're new. You might have to marry the two, but she's definitely going to be able to give you ideas of ways to think outside the box. So, for instance, when she talks about properties of physics, one of the first things she does is brings in Hot Wheels to class and pieces of track. Kids all get, and she goes into this in much more detail in the book, but like gives out certain number of pieces of track to each kid and Hot Wheels and says, see what you can do with it. And then they have a day where they just try and see what can you come up with like 4 pieces of track, 3 connector pieces, and 2 Hot Wheels, right? Like, and then comes up with projects with that and allows kids to learn by doing. Learning about magnets by reading about magnets when you could just bring in magnets just seems always like a lost opportunity to me. So it's really trying to look at what you're learning in class and figuring out, is there a way that you can make part of that come alive? The second thing is, try, right? Like one of the things I'm going to talk about, I'm doing a talk next week, and it's a brand new keynote that I'm giving. One of the things I talk about is try, fail fast, take notes, try again, and adjust. Just keep adjusting. It's like a lesson plan is basically a hypothesis. You're putting it out there, see if it works. Take notes, keep adjusting until you find the right fit of the thing that you're doing. So that's another just kind of idea of how to do that. And look, I'll tell you this, buddy. Being a part of a community like this or any other community that you find, like if you find a good community online or in person is even better, finding folks to connect with that love the work is going to be the thing that makes you or breaks you this year. If the science department sucks and they're not really fun at your school and they all hate school, don't hang out with the science department. But you find there's like an English teacher, a history teacher, and 2 math teachers that are great, start asking them to eat lunch. Start asking them to go out for coffee or for dinner after school. Start finding ways to bridge that, to build that community, because that's gonna fuel your fire. Other people will try and suck the oxygen out of the room all the time with their negativity. It's really being positive. So as a teacher, I'm going to recap. Making things come alive as much as you can. Don't be afraid to fail. It is part of the job, but don't let the failure define you. Adjust, take notes, and keep going. Chris Carson's favorite word, pivot. And then the third thing is find yourself a community of people that are inspiring and motivating to you, that are going to help you to do better. I'm really doing the rest of this. You have blood on your arm. I have a dead bug on my hand.
I know.
And don't think it's not something I'm not thinking about as I'm answering these questions.
Okay, well, just a few more. Rebecca has a follow-up from earlier when she asked about her self-contained class. And she said, what non-negotiables would you make with the paras? A few of them don't like to follow plans or do work for the work for the kid. How to have everyone on the same page?
I think
that's a tough one.
Rebecca, when I think about this, I'm really thinking about how much you're the leader in this. That if you have a para, if you have a co-teacher, I'm co-teaching, I'm co-leading this room with you. This is not my class, it is our class. If you have a para, I want there to be a level of that, but because by design, paras typically, because the paras I've worked with, they're pulled in 100 different directions, right? So they're not sitting there making the lesson plans with me. They don't have the time to have the input in a class. I've had a few, right? My buddy Stu had a bunch of classes with me one year, which we kind of just finagled and made sure that he was in my room like 3 or 4 times a day instead of all over the place. That was different because then we could really dial in some non-negotiables and the way that class was going to flow. He actually became more of a co-teacher. But if you're someone that's just dropping in and doing what needs to be done, it's you're making sure you're giving those people what to do. I'm going to recommend a book to you. There's now I'm going to forget. It's John. Why am I forgetting this all of a sudden?
What's
just
the
had it. It's like 12 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership, I think it's called. John, why am I forgetting this dude's name? He's a huge business leader. It is a great book. It's a super fast read, and you don't even have to read full chapters. You'll get the gist of it, right? Like read the 12 irrefutable laws and like their little description, and you'll basically get it. If you need to read the rest of the chapter, go for it. What is his name?
Maxwell.
That's it. John Maxwell. Yes. The idea there is that that's going to give you a lot of how to lead, and it's one of my favorite books on leadership of all time. And then the other thing is, you have to really know why you're doing anything. Once you know why you're doing it, it's easier to explain to other people. And when they can't support, when they're running what they think, because if you don't have a why, then you're running what you do off of feelings. When you run what you do off of feelings, it doesn't help anybody. You're just feeling like this is important. You're feeling like kids should respect you. You're feeling like kids should do this kind of work. You feel like kids should have to do homework because that's what kids do. They do homework. We're in school. Kids get homework. It's what everyone did. I got homework when I was a kid. So now I feel like kids should have homework now. I don't care what your feelings are. What does the research say? What does the data say? What does the classroom say? What do I say? So it's having something to back that up with. And then letting folks have a say, but being willing to have the conversation. Being like, oh, you think that's important? Let's have that conversation. I'll go into it with curiosity. But if I see that it does not benefit students, I don't do it. Everything I do in school starts with, how does this benefit kids? How does this level kids up? How does this make class better for students? That's where I start with. And then if what you're saying is more in line with like what's better for you, I don't want you to burn yourself out. I'm not asking you to be a martyr or burn yourself down so that, you're just ashes and we can go, hey man, great job down there. I want you to do great, but we have to be focused on students as well. So that's, I guess, kind of what I'm looking at.
That's a good answer. Okay, well, let's take one more. So Teaching Romance is asking, when each class is only 45 minutes, what general lesson structure would you follow? Or how would you make sure students have enough time to practice while also learn new content?
It's tough. I've had 55-minute classes are my jam. I've had as low as 42 minutes, and man, it sucks. It's so hard to do it. It's hard to not have homework at that point because I need to move the needle, right? Like there's just not enough time. I think part of the structure that I have is really, like I said earlier, it's dialing in and making sure that every moment counts. There's no downtime in class. And look, I think that can still be fun, right? Like a bullet train gets to its destination quickly, but it's efficient. So when you come in, we're not losing time handing things out, right? Like I'm looking for places I can get back time. How do I get back time from handing things out? How do I get back time from explaining the directions? How do I get back time from you knowing what happens in the pre-class or the bell ringer every single day? Transitioning to the next activity. One of the ways that I shifted how I did things was I found that some lesson plans, books, ideas took as long as they took because my curriculum said they had to, right? The curriculum says that learning, like reading a Shakespeare play, should take 7 weeks. Why? Well, because that's what the curriculum says. Dude, but if you go see a Shakespeare play, it's 3 hours. Like beginning to end, it's 3 hours. Now, I realize that kids need a lot more time to digest that, and we're trying to do things with what we're doing. We're not just like watching it for just entertainment value. We're trying to dissect any number of things as part of that lesson. But it became a question of, what do I need kids to know? And what are the essentials in knowing that? So I'm not going to talk about this much stuff just because that's what everyone else does. That's what I feel like it should be. That's what was in the lesson plan or the curriculum or the whatever. It's paring it down. what is the easiest, like, what if this was easy? If I had to get kids to understand the difference between a soliloquy and an aside, if I had to get kids to know the difference between simile and metaphor, the difference between that, to understand what comic relief was, to understand what that, like, any number, like finding an author's voice, tone. If I had to get kids to understand the whatever, like, you could do this with any class, like what the basis of the Civil War was. Like, there's like, if I look at something like the Civil War in the United States, it's so massive of a conversation. You cannot have it in a class period, let alone a school year, right? You could, like, literally, like, people devote their lives to a study of something like that, or physics. But how can I, in its simplest form, understand what this is, understand what this means to you, and understand what we're doing this for? That's what I'm looking for. What do I need you to know? Why do I need you to know it? What is the shortest pathway to get there? That gives me at least the core of what I'm at. I can branch out from there, right? Like, I can build this out from there. I'm not saying like Spark Notes your life, but then when I'm adding on layers, they're never from a place of, but I have to touch on this, or I have to touch on this, or I have to touch on this. Why? Like, it's looking at the why behind all of those things, and really, does it speak to that core principle? I hope I'm answering your question, but that's kind of how I start looking at things, and cutting out all superfluous information and components of any particular lesson.
That's one of those things, again, it's hard to answer just in this.
Yeah.
It's why
that's my 7 to 10 minute answer.
It's why, like, in the lesson planning workshop, like, that's one that goes through that a bit more also.
And that's something we do in mentoring too. Like, if you sign up for mentoring, I sit with teachers and I'll go through your lesson plans. I'll talk to you about your unit. Like, you can just send me that unit plan, and I'll go through it, and we talk about it on a call or something like that too. So that's, and
you can get your school to pay for it, because we've had a lot of mentees.
Your school to pay for everything.
Yes. Don't sign up for workshops, mentoring. You need it. We're here to help, but we really don't want you to pay for it.
I had someone the other day, school paid for the workshop and just said, can you email my principal? And I think we're going to make a certificate for them. If you need a certificate, we'll make it. We've tried to make them. Well, we were going to make them for everyone. That's a whole nother story, but a lot of work. But not everyone needs them, because because professional development requirements are so different in each state. But my point is, school paid for the workshop for the VIP, and I just have to email the principal when they're done, and they're getting professional development hours for it too, right? So it's like, it's a win-win-win for everyone.
All right, I'm going to do one more question, because it's from
then we have to pick up Brody, who's coming home from camp. We haven't seen our child in days.
We're excited to go see him, but this is one that I want to answer for Steph, because it's a hard one.
Hit it, Steph Shook.
Okay, Steph is asking, how do you deal with your own mental health concerns while teaching? Psych test results came in on Friday, processing and trying to figure out upcoming year with new diagnosis.
I feel like you want to say something to this first. I have an answer. I
mean, my answer is kind of always the same. It's like, prioritize yourself. You have to. Teaching is endless. I'm not a teacher, and I've never been a public school teacher or like in a classroom. When
you marry a teacher, you're basically a teacher assistant for free for the rest of your life.
Yes, and we talk so much about like all kinds of things prior to even ever having a YouTube channel. That's just how we operate together. So I know a lot about teaching, and I've taught my own schools, but regardless, teaching is just endless. It's never ending. So I think in this season, it's seasons, Steph. Like, there are seasons that you're going to be able to have all the time and energy and focus to your students. And there are other seasons that you're not, but that's why teaching is a community, right? Someone else is going to pick up where you are not able to fully be the teacher that you have been in previous seasons or really would aspire to be, but you have to take care of you so you can take care of your own children and your students. You really just have to prioritize yourself and give yourself the mental health breaks if you need to call out a day or anything like that. But it's prioritizing you, which I think can be hard if you're struggling with any sort of like depression or other real mental health things. Like, that's already hard enough on its own, let alone dealing with something else. That's what I got.
That is great advice. And I love that because you're a mom also. And the same thing is true with your kids.
And that doesn't come easy, right? Like I've been in that season, like after my brother and my dad passed, like lots of trauma came up, lots of just past stuff and lots of just healing from and grief, right? It threw me into a major depression, and it was incredibly hard to it was incredibly hard to go take 1 hour on a Saturday and go do therapy upstairs on a computer on an online call. But like, it made me feel better when I did it. So I like knew that I needed to prioritize me.
Yes.
But it's hard.
I would say add to that. Look, from a faith perspective, Steph, I immediately think of things like God's going to pick up the slack where I don't have it right now. God knows what's going on in my life. God will take care of the things like, so no kid's going to be left out to dry because I couldn't show up in this season. That you need to be number one on your list of values, right? So for me, it is my relationship with God, my relationship with myself, then my relationship with her, then my relationship with my kids, then work. Work's fifth on the level. And because without my connection with God, I have nothing else. Without my connection to me, if I'm not doing good with me, I can't give anything to her. If our relationship isn't strong, then who cares if I'm a good parent? Then I just have like kids growing up in a household that is uncomfortable and is not filled with love, right? So our overflow of our love for one another gets on our kids. My overflow of my love with my kids does not benefit my wife. She's not like, man, this is so like, I'm so glad you guys are bonded. Like, it actually can be resentful, right? That it's like you're getting along with the kids and we don't get along and the kids don't like me as much. That's a whole thing. Anyway, I would say, one, unless you're getting paid for them, this goes for every teacher, unless you're getting paid on the back end, take every sick day you have this year. And then John Lopez them. So if you don't know who John Lopez is, he's in the comment section right now. Lopez sends me pictures every time he gets the intentional flu and he's out eating scallops and drinking wine or going to a movie or enjoying something. He doesn't just take it. He plans a day and goes and does something for himself. I would also say start with, even if it's an hour a week, that is your hour. You go do something like bowling, frisbee golf, take a walk, go draw, sketch, paint, get coffee with a friend. 1 hour a week. There are a lot of hours in a week, and I'm not good at math, so I don't know how many that is, but I'm telling you, there's a lot of them. Are you going to do some math real quick?
No.
Oh, damn it. 1 hour a week, make it on a Saturday at a time that works for you, and do that. I really think multiple hours a day. So I get up and I have my first hour every morning is just me. I make coffee for both of us, and I sit, I pray, meditate, and journal for an hour every single morning. And when I was teaching, I got up earlier than 4:30, 5 o'clock every day, just so I could still have that hour. My day's better because of it. When I started taking Saturdays, and I'm not there right now, I'll tell you straight up, my life's too busy right now because it's summertime and I'm trying to make money that I didn't make last winter. That having a day a week, an entire day,
this is so
that
hard.
is off, where I'm just doing what I like, not what I need to do. I'm not cleaning out the air conditioner unit. I'm not, scraping paint. I'm not getting house projects done. I am doing what I'm resting, rejuvenating for a whole day. It feels like the most luxurious thing that you ever did in your life as a parent, right? It feels completely countercultural and like you're a total piece of crap. You get used to doing that. Oh man, it's look, I'm going to break it down like this. If you ever read Eat, Pray, Love, it is the part when it is the art of doing nothing when she's in Italy and starts figuring out what does it look like to do nothing, like, and not just get drunk and watch a bunch of Netflix. It's like, do things that I love, do things that rejuvenate me, do things that make me feel good.
That's even a hard question to answer. Like, I've been thinking about that a lot, like in taking a Sabbath, because I'm like, well,
What the hell do I do all day?
I like cooking, but then I have to clean up the mess, and I don't like that part. And like my free time is like laundry, cooking, cleaning, or doing bills.
Yeah.
So it's like figuring out
it's hard.
What do I do in that time?
And it costs money, right? So it's like, what do I do? I'm not trying to just spend a whole bunch of money.
And we don't do that. So it's thinking about what can I do that fills me up, that doesn't.
So lower the threshold, 1 hour a week. What would it look like if I took half a day off a week? 4 hours.
Yeah.
Where I just did things I liked. And, I'm thankful. I like being with her. I like being with my kids and stuff. But pour in, Steph, I'm telling, it's the answer.
It is.
Right? It's on top of therapy, pour into yourself and know that no kid's going to be left out to dry because you couldn't give them all of it. It's like
you are not the answer to any student's problems.
Nope. No. But the time you are with kids, be present.
Yeah.
Be fully there. And so practice that is not a one and done thing, is a practice. Practice those disciplines and start implementing them in your lives. And I swear to you, that is part of
it's part
when
of
I'm
the
overwhelmed,
process.
that's the thing that makes me feel better.
Yeah.
So with that, this week, Wednesday, Thursday, new Teacher Bootcamp is coming up. You can sign up
on our website.
Yeah, it'll be it's in the description of this video right now. And if you're on Spotify, if you're listening to this as the podcast, it's going to be in the description box below the podcast stuff as well. And that's it, gang. We will see you next week. We're going to go pick up our son now, who I'm very, very excited to go see.
And we're going to wash the mosquito.
We're going to go wash guts off of our hands. Thanks for being with us. Do it all. See you next week. Peace.